The Spinoff Podcast Network.
This is Kiwi is back for a brand new season with more inspiring kōrero from special guests including rugby player, father and role model TJ Perenara.
My family bring me joy. Rugby brings me joy too, but it's not the same joy as my family brings me.
And global dancer and choreographer Kirsten Dodgen.
For some reason, people think I'm very intimidating.
Listen to the new season of This is Kiwi, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network in collaboration with KiwiBank. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBank.
Welcome to a very special edition of The Real Pod. This is kind of like an emergency episode based in 2004.
Yeah, it's a very special episode.
It's a very special episode.
It's your story, Alex. Well, I'm so excited to be doing this. This to me is we're talking about the past, but it also feels like a vision of what we could do. And all that it took was Alex to basically destroy herself writing her masterpiece.
My name's Jane Yee. I'm joined by Duncan Greive. I'm joined by oral history writer extraordinaire Alex Casey. We are here to talk about Hamo's song and video, We Gone Ride. And why are we doing that, Alex?
Well, I've just published what has been one of the most fun and exciting things that I've written in a long time, I think. The complete oral history of the song, the music video, the success, the journey. But I did just want to say, all I did was hit record, truly.
Oh my God.
The story told itself.
This is the story absolutely unraveled, and I don't want this to be anything to do with me.
It's such a great yarn. I think that I am epicenter of the demo for this.
I basically wrote this for you and Jane.
And we love you for that.
It's so good. It's the most transformative piece of writing. If you listen to this and you haven't read it, I implore you. I just cannot stress enough what a fantastic and fascinating story that Alex has concocted. That I just don't think anyone else would have even thought to assess, let alone drill into and so artfully create as you have. It's so good.
And also, I feel like people would have thought, why bother? That's a silly little thing to write about. But the fact that you did, and then all that you got out of it, shows why bother.
Exactly. We'll explain why bother, because I reckon it's a really good,
Yeah.
It's a good question.
This has been on my long list for a long time, and I am actually quite like a psycho purist, and I did want to wait for the 20-year anniversary, which is actually next year in September 2024. We Gone Ride famously came out September 2004. But it was playing in the car. I was driving along Littleton Road in Christchurch, and I was like, it came on My FM, and I had this cellular physical reaction to hearing it, and I was just like, this was a huge moment. And, to give you context, 2004, I was 13 years old and I was living in the South Wairarapa in Featherston. So for it to reach me, we were in the regions. We didn't even have C4. We barely, and I mean this genuinely, barely had radio. But Hamo's We Gone Ride was the first song on Now That's What I Call Music 16, which was my gateway to the world. Those compilations were very important to me. And I just remember it being everywhere, even at little old Greytown Primary School, for the rest of that year. So I was just like, it's time. I'm going to call some people. And the entire thing just unraveled, and there was so much that I didn't know about this song and this story.
So it was 23,000 words when you began the big cull, and you got it down to, I think it's 7 or 8. It's not short, but it absolutely gallops along like the song does. But I think what it showed to me was, because I grew up writing about music. That was my whole entry into journalism. And Jane, who's actually featured in the video, and we'll get to that. But I think the thing that it really brought home to me was just how much story and culture there is in music, and how even, like, if you think about the cultural memory of We Gon' Ride, it's of a one-hit wonder. It is almost like the quintessential one-hit wonder. It is our region's version of, like, This Is Why I'm Hot, or All Gold Everything, or one of a million different kind of fantastic hip-hop songs that blazed and then vanished. But when you get into it, you realize that this has roots stretching back into the 80s, like that it was actually really formative for the culture and for so many people involved. This was their absolute zenith. And man, there's just so much in this story. It's such a moment.
It also just really spoke to a time where, God, and it's literally just New Zealand Music Month has just started and is like a nothing, right, in 2023. In 2004, New Zealand music was peaking, in no small part to the hip-hop movement. But there were lots of pop and rock and indie songs about as well. And it was just a huge time that I would never have predicted we'd end up in this position. It felt like it was the beginning of how things were always going to be from here on. And this song defines that in so many ways.
Totally. It feels like the peak of something, but also the last moment of something. You know, you can see there's really great quotes in there from Adam Holt, who I know quite well, the GM of Universal. You do too, Jane, about, you know, this was a CD era hit. So, Alex, like, talk about I don't know, am I interviewing you? What the hell is this podcast? But like, I'm real curious about the things that you discover. What stands out in your memory now that you've got the thing kind of forged and made?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Doug. Wow, what a great question. I love that this has become an interview about me, even though I distinctly asked for it not to be.
Oh, didn't you? Did you? My bad.
Well, look, I know that all the, you know, the media, the context, the tech stuff would all be mighty appealing to someone like yourself. For me, it was I've always loved a factoid, you know, I've loved a factoid, I've loved a little bit of trivia. And there were like so many little things peppered through it. Like, I mean, I didn't even know that Hamo was actually called Sani Sagala, and he had performed under all these different names throughout the 90s and was friends with all these incredible people like Maddie Rice, who made the album with Hamo. He came up with the name Aotearoa Millionaires Club, like just casually in conversation. Jess Peters, who features in the video alongside you, Jane, as a cub reporter, you know, she went on to work at Universal and then become this incredible international tour manager. When I got 5 minutes with her on Zoom, it was because she was being shouted at by Steven Tyler in LA. There was just
wild.
like, I don't know, I felt like...
tour's kicking off, you know? She's busy.
And this hasn't really answered your question, but it just genuinely felt like, for me, I pulled a single string and just like this entire multiverse of incredible talent and all these people who seem to just be like completely galaxy brain before and like immediately after this video just showed up.
It's really interesting because I feel like you know, you think of something like Stereogram's Walkie Talkie Man, which also was like huge, lots of press. It was a big moment.
It's on an iPod ad.
It's on an iPod ad. It was old mate, what's his name, who did these amazing stop motion videos. I've forgotten his name.
This is going great.
And yet, to me, this is the video that when you think, if you like, you could only choose one big significant video, it's this, you know, this video was the one that really sticks in my memory. And the fact that you've just pulled one string and so many people came to talk about it with so much affection and such happy memories just speaks to that moment in time and what an impact this had. Even though we didn't necessarily realise it at the time, because I don't know that you'd get the same response if you tried to pull out everyone in the woodwork for like Walkie Talkie Man, even though it's a great video, you know?
Coming soon to the Spinoff.
I'm certain you wouldn't. But it is, I think it's because it was this just this eruption around it that was bottled in a single song. Like if you think about Decepticons or Scribe or David Dallas or like a whole bunch of the other, you know, the other music that came out around that time, kind of, it sort of built up and then died down in a kind of a more orderly way, whereas this just was an absolute explosion, even down to like they were shooting at Britomart when Britomart was just born, and you know, like there were just so many like elements of it that are just like they just so transported it to that very specific moment in time, and it's crazy, right? Because it's the $60,000 budget is on some level why you write the story, because it's just this crazy looking video, and it does feel like it's beamed in from a wholly different financial and aesthetic ecosystem. And I'm also like looking at it going like, I do not know how they made this for 60 grand. Like, it seems cheap because there is so much going on, including you, Jane.
Well, yeah, and, you know, I wasn't paid, and that's the thing, right? Like, in that era, people would do favours all the time, even for what was. I mean, I cannot stress enough how massive and mind-blowing the 60K budget was in the music industry. Like, the murmurs that went around, like, we got wind of the fact that someone was investing 60K into this, and that was like international artist kind of video budgets. It seemed implausible. And you're right, you look back now and think $60,000 shouldn't get you everything that it did, and it probably didn't. A lot of people probably were volunteering their time. But at the same time, it was this ginormous budget, so it was kind of weird. But I don't know, it was, to me, arriving at Britomart that night, because we were shooting a behind the scenes for the TV show I worked for, it was just wild that they had streets. Like, you know, nighttime in the city. I feel like it might have even been like a Friday night or something, but it was nighttime in Auckland City, and somehow Chris Graham did some sweet talking with the Auckland City Council, and they had entire streets shut off.
I didn't actually investigate this for the story, but the incoming mayor during this period was serial tycoon Dick Hubbard.
Right.
I do wonder if there was some, like, you know, some contra deal done there, you know, some serial exchange sort of thing,
It did seem like Sani just popped up, Hamo just popped up out of nowhere, and yet when you read your piece, Alex, everyone in there, like people that we regard as absolute legends of New Zealand hip-hop, are talking about how much of a legend he is to them and was well before this. So I think for the kind of like the general public consciousness is that, like you say, a one-hit wonder, this dude who just decided to have a hoon
like
at a track,
rapper.
got lucky. Yeah. But actually, he'd been doing the groundwork for years and years, and it was a very deliberate decision to make a pop hip-hop track, to be in bright colours while Scribe was in dark colours, to kind of like offer something different.
It's amazing as well, because you listen to it and it sounds like Technicolor. It sounds huge. Like, I remember hearing the beat and going, this can't be from New Zealand. Like, we had a sort of an aesthetic, and it almost felt like there was like technical limitations on just how big a beat could be from here. And then Chong Li just drops down with this absolute like Neptune's Timberland like scale, just like everything overlaid to hell. And you're like, what is this? And Adam Holt at one point says, I think the song was too big. Like, it kind of killed the rest of his career. I kind of believe it. Even sonically, it's like,
impossible to follow.
It just burns everything else.
Yeah. I mean, that was another factoid. There was something else I wanted to say about Sani, but first, just the factoid that Chong Li got the beat sent to him from his cousin Francis, who now is in the Black Seeds, and that it was like a beat from a
PlayStation game.
A GTA PlayStation game that he just built on and built on and built on. And that's just so cool.
So gorgeous.
That stood, I have my hand up. Excuse me, miss. That stood out to me.
Like we're in class. We're so excited.
We're so excited. That stood out to me reading your piece, because I didn't know that. I mean, it may have come up in an interview before, but it's completely scrapped from my memory. But I want to know, do PlayStation know about this? Have they clocked onto it? Was there any exchange?
I think there was no issue like with the song being released, but something that Adam Holt said, which I had to cut for length, which I did think was quite interesting, is he was sort of speculating as to why We Got Ride never found the big success that Savage's Swing did in like a movie, kind of getting a second life. And it was because they couldn't track down the person who wrote that particular beat in the PlayStation thing, so they couldn't get it cleared for licensing, so no one else was ever able to use it.
That is so interesting, because the swing comparison is really apt. Like, that's the only other beat to come out of that era that has a similar kind of sonic scale to it, and that's enormous. That's been synced multiple times. That Savage had a career, Because he could have been a novelty rapper in some respects as well, even though, he's got that Decepticons connection. But because of that, whereas this, like, that's kind of heartbreaking to think, because you can imagine that song playing in all of those, like, frat pack kind of OO's comedies.
Yeah, but again, I didn't really put it in because he was kind of just speculating and didn't really say they'd been, like, approached about a bunch of stuff. And, there was a lot of talk. Everyone basically was talking about this fluke of the international success, the swing, the how bizarre, and just, like, you can never plan for that or have a pipeline for that. But what struck me for everything about how interesting this is in terms of, like, music, technology, culture was just Sani's story. The fact that he had been at it for a decade and had given it up. Like, in 1999, he was, like, he had had his son. And he was
working in a bakery?
He was working in a bakery. He was like, I'm done. I'm retiring from music in 1999. And then got the call in 2003. And he was nearly 30 when all this kind of just suddenly kicked off for him.
I was about to say this gives me hope, but then you've dropped in that he was nearly 30. I'm like, no, it has well and truly
nearly washed up.
But in a way, and he kind of talks about this towards the end, is that kind of made him perfectly primed for this moment because he had been constantly reinventing himself, constantly kind of, hustling and studying. Like, he's really serious about music, and that he talks, like you mentioned, Jane, that he was studying Scribe and seeing what Scribe was doing, and it basically made this active decision to be like, I'm going to do the complete opposite of that. And that's my new character. And that's Hamo, So I was just really moved by that in terms of, like, I don't know, this sort of magical creativity kind of a story that he was like, the timing might seem late for people, but for me it was absolutely perfect. And I always knew I could do it, and I did it, and I'm good. It was just
it's like a movie, honestly.
I'm like
option it. I keep saying it's a book on Slack and stuff, but it's just all the cultural forms. It's such a fantastic story that you put together, honestly.
Honestly, such nice guys, Alex?
Incredible. Chong-Ni had so much time for you, Jane. I had to cut it for length. But God, that man loves you.
I love him too. They were fun, and I think when you're working in music and you work with a lot of musicians who are very deliberately trying to play it cool, and that, again, it speaks to the fact that Chong-Ni was like, I'm going to write a motherfucking hip-hop song, let Scribe do the cool thing. This is what I'm going to do. And that carried through as well. I think that is his personality. Like, he is just an open, affable, funny, fun-loving guy. Very humble, and just a couple of really fucking great Kiwis.
But, I mean, I think that there was, because hip-hop hadn't really had any kind of full scene way. We'd had, like, hit songs, we'd had hit singers, hit rappers, but it
hit opera singers?
Well, no, I'm talking about, like, Shei Fu and Kinkapisi and so on, who sort of presaged this era. But the fact that it was a bundle and it was pop, it wasn't like cool, even though it was cool. Like, it didn't have that sort of level of kind of critical acclaim or restraint or whatever. The fact of this all happening, like that, like it just, and it feeling real and it feeling scale, like there's references made to the Hip Hop Summit, which I remember attending and just going, what is this? It was like a culture just creating itself in front of your eyes, and going to, like, release parties for, like, Dirty Records artists and stuff, and just seeing them sort of inhaling this moment and realizing that the sort of the wildest dreams of what they had kind of imagined a hip-hop scene to be growing up were, like, happening to them right now. Like, these moments are so vividly, like, I remember them so vividly after reading this, and just, like, that's the thing. Like, these artists they had no right to expect it because it had never happened before here, and then quite suddenly there was just this explosion that blazed brightly for, like, a couple of summers, and this was the absolute zenith of it. God, it was a moment.
I like to remind you of my little dote of when I was sponsored by Converse while I was on Squeeze, and I went out to the Converse, factory shop or whatever it was, and they told me that the Decepticons was sponsored for 26 new pairs a year. They offered me the same deal. 26 new pairs a year. That's one every 2 weeks. There's 4 Decepticons. Whoa. You do the math. It's a lot of pairs of shoes, but that is like the hip-hop dream, right? You're getting free kicks every couple of weeks.
That is crazy. You were basically you were an influencer before there were influencers, because you were also on the smoke-free ads as well.
No, I
right?
wasn't on the smoke-free ads.
Did you never make them?
I was on the depression ads.
Oh, they all had the same kind of moody aesthetic.
Specifically, I wasn't promoting depression. Quite the opposite.
Get involved.
I was putting a discussion about it.
Join the community. Sound off in
there
the
was
comments.
something else I wanted to say, which again, just like dredged up all this stuff from a deep, little dusty treasure trove in my mind, was all the other songs that were on that Hamo album that nothing came close to We Gone Ride, but there was a lot of singles. There was that Cry Again song that had Tim Finn on it, where they remixed that song.
Yes.
Yeah, there was To the Floor, which was actually quite massive.
That was
and
a big song. I'm sorry, I'm just this is all like these songs that you rediscovered when you look back. As you're telling me, I'm like, oh yeah, there was more than one.
Yeah, and that what I like about that is, they didn't have the same budget for that video, but they knew they wanted to do something big for the follow-up, so they were like, we're going to try and throw the party to end all parties. And there's heaps of celebrities in it. Jonah Lomu is in it. The guys from Nesia Mystic, Savage is in it. And I like that, you could see at the time they were not slowing down. They were just like, let's keep going. What's going to be the next big thing? And it just so happened that kind of everything crumbled around it in terms of CD sales, piracy. I mean, there's so much else going on, but definitely revisit the other songs on that album, because there's a lot of little tunes in there, and you'll probably know more than you think.
Alex, you've done a service to the community by writing this
I've
story.
done nothing. Again, I repeat, all I did was hit record.
Not true.
I'm just...
I mean, you shared this with us. I was cursedly up on all my emails at the time, but it was after 11 last night. That is not nothing.
You took a seed of an idea and you watered it and you gave it sunshine and you let it grow and do its thing. So without you, that would just be, in our memories, a one-hit wonder of no great significance. And now you've unravelled and revealed the truth. So thank you. Thank you for your work. And
welcome, everybody.
Thank
Real
you.
normal stuff going on in this podcast.
Thank you for...
This is so weird. Am I about to get an ONZ
Yes.
men?
We have got the same award for you as we do for
Go
Nessa
check the
Salter.
door. Suzanne Paul is there with your little crown.
But in all honesty, great story.
Cracking yarn.
Cracking
really
yarn.
Good. Really
well
good.
done. And
Thanks,
mostly,
everybody.
I love it because I was in the video. So
Cracking song. And
Did you know Jane was in the video and you still live in LA?
yeah, sorry, Jane, were you in it? And was it true that you were dating Ada Paquin? I did have to cut that for length as well, but Jane, you did have a funny anecdote about how many times you were plagued by that question, even though it didn't make sense, in the world of of the song. You were the one demanding answers.
I was.
And did you ever get them?
Never got them, but Samuel watched the whole video. Samuel's producing this, by the way. I watched the whole video through, knowing that I was in the video, and got to the end and said, were you in that video? So that's how much impact I made on that, whatever it was, 3 or 4 minutes of iconic music television. Literally zero. Anyway, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening to this. It was extremely self-indulgent of us because we just all love this and wanted to talk about it.
I disagree. I think this is the new format.
Okay, here we go. All right, and we have just about to have a production meeting, obviously. So thanks for listening. Thanks, Alex, for writing. Thanks, Samuel, for recording. Thanks, Duncan, for your reckons. And we'll be back with regular programming next week.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Greive, founder of The Spinoff. You can help us keep all of The Spinoff's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
The Spinoff Podcast Network.